Hello and welcome to Bedtime Encyclopedias. Today, we will calmly journey through time to investigate the long, gradual, and surprisingly intricate history of the doorknob. It does not shout for attention. It does not demand praise. And yet, quietly, patiently, the doorknob has stood beside us for centuries, faithfully guarding rooms, homes, and quiet places of rest. In this 2-hour examination, we will move slowly, steadily, from ancient wooden latches to gleaming brass fixtures to modern motion sensors and silent magnetic locks. There will be no urgency, no surprises, only the gentle turning of history, one handle at a time. Let us begin by stepping back many centuries to the days before the doorknob existed at all. Before we begin our slow journey through time, I invite you to settle in. Find a comfortable position, perhaps sitting back or gently reclining. Allow your shoulders to loosen. Let your hands rest without effort. Even as we speak about objects made of metal, wood, and glass, you are under no obligation to imagine them vividly. You may simply listen, without expectation. There is no quiz at the end. No key facts to remember. Only the steady unfolding of history, at a pace as slow as a turning knob itself. You may notice your breathing, rising and falling, like the silent opening and closing of a well-fitted door. If, at any point, your mind drifts away, that is perfectly fine. You may let the narration continue on without you. The story of the doorknob does not demand complete attention. It is content to exist quietly in the background. It has done so for centuries. For the doorknob is not a loud invention. It is not celebrated in museums. No child declares proudly, "When I grow up, I want to be a locksmith." And yet, this small, humble object has accompanied nearly every human being through nearly every stage of life. From the first time a toddler learns to pull open a door, to the final moment someone closes one softly behind them. The doorknob is a silent companion. Ever ready, ever patient, never asking to be admired, only asking to be turned. And so, with calm intention, we begin. Let us step gently into section 1. Before the doorknob. Long before doorknobs, there were doors. But these early doors were far simpler than the framed, hinged, and fitted doors we know today. In ancient civilizations, Mesopotamia, Egypt, early Greece, doors were often made of heavy stone slabs or thick wooden planks. They were not designed for privacy. They were designed for separation. To keep animals out. To keep wind and sand from entering. To open such a door, one did not turn a knob. One pulled or pushed. Some doors had ropes attached. Others featured basic bars across the inside, which set into wooden holders. If you wished to open such a door, you lifted the bar. If you wished to close it, you dropped it again. It is hard to imagine reaching for a doorknob when doorknobs did not yet exist. There were no hinges as we know them. Some doors rotated within carved stone sockets. Others slid. Others rested freely, wedged in place. The concept of controlled entry existed, but the mechanism was rudimentary. Privacy, as a personal choice, was not yet a central concern. Doors were less about keeping one person out, and more about blocking the outside world. So for many centuries, humanity lived without turning anything to open a door. No twist. No rotation. No latch. Just force. However, as social structures became more complex, and as people began to own possessions and store valuables, something new emerged. The idea of locking. And with locks came latches. And with latches, eventually, came knobs. But slowly. In imagining these early doors, it is helpful to picture not just the door itself, but the experience of approaching it. There were no doorbells. No peepholes. No house numbers. No polite framework for knocking. In many ancient homes, a visitor would simply stand outside and announce their presence verbally. Sometimes loudly. Sometimes with a respectful cough or a rhythmic clap, or by striking a nearby object, perhaps a stone against a post. Before knobs, before rings, before knockers, sound was the doorway's true handle. If no sound came from inside, one might assume no one was home, or that entry was not allowed. Doors did not yet invite touch. They simply existed as barriers of wood, reed, stone, or cloth. In some regions, particularly in warmer climates, fabric curtains or woven mats replaced doors entirely. There was no turning of anything at all. One simply lifted the covering or brushed it aside. Even when wooden doors were used, hinges were rare. Some doors were not attached at all. They leaned against their frame and had to be removed entirely to enter. You did not open the door, you relocated it. This required strength. It required effort. It required a moment of intention. The modern concept of opening a door with just 2 fingers, effortlessly, almost absent-mindedly, would have been unthinkable. Entry was labor. And because of that, it was significant. There is also something important to understand about privacy in early human settlements. The idea of personal space, a private room, closed off for solitude, simply did not exist for most people. A door was not for individual seclusion. It was for group protection. A family might live in one room. They might sleep, cook, store food, and talk, all within the same space. So the act of closing a door was not about avoiding conversation. It was about keeping the wind out, or keeping animals from wandering in, or keeping night itself at bay. When darkness fell, and torches dimmed, and the world outside became uncertain and mysterious, someone would walk to the doorway, lift the bar across it, or pile objects against it. And that act, that final sealing of the entrance, marked the true closing of the day. There was no lock to twist. No knob to turn. Only the soft scraping of wood against wood as the barrier was set in place. In many early cultures, doors were also symbolic thresholds between the human realm and the unknown. In ancient Egypt, carved images of protective deities were often placed near doorways to watch over those who slept inside. In ancient Greece, household gods known as Hestia or Hermes Propylaos guarded the entrance. The door, even without a knob, was understood as the meeting point between safety and uncertainty. And the method of opening it, whether by lifting, shifting, or pushing, was a kind of ritual. Even without mechanics, there was meaning. Let us imagine now a traveler arriving at such a door long ago, perhaps in a clay-walled dwelling in ancient Mesopotamia. or a timber home in early Scandinavia. The visitor approaches. There is no button to press, no handle to pull. Instead, they pause. They speak softly. They wait. From inside, someone may respond or not. If welcomed, the host would lift the beam, or slide aside the plank, or draw back the curtain. The door did not yield to anyone's hand. It yielded only to permission. In that sense, early doors were not just physical barriers, but social agreements. Contrast this with modern times, where one may turn a knob without announcing oneself, walk through without speaking a word, enter without invitation. But in those early days, entry was always acknowledged. Perhaps, in some quiet way, the world was slower for it. And so, before we celebrate the ingenious mechanics of modern doorknobs, it is worth appreciating just how long humanity functioned without them. For thousands of years, people opened doors not with devices, but with rituals. And then, silently, subtly, as societies grew, and privacy developed as a concept, technology arose. Not to change the purpose of doors, but to change the ease with which we pass through them. With that gentle awareness, we are now ready to watch the first true handles emerge. As we reflect on those earliest forms of entry, it becomes clear that doors themselves evolved long before the mechanisms that controlled them. Before knobs, before handles, even before hinges, there was simply the act of covering. A doorway was not always something solid. Sometimes it was a bundle of reeds tied together. Sometimes animal hide stretched across wooden poles. Sometimes woven grasses, layered and dampened, to keep out dust or desert sand. These coverings did not swing. They did not click or latch. They simply hung, moving only when touched by people or by wind. To enter, one did not grasp anything. One simply leaned forward, and the covering yielded, slow and gentle. In such homes, there was no concept of opening a door. One merely passed through. We might imagine now the feeling of such an entrance in the middle of the night. A faint breeze slipping past the curtain. The soft whisper of dried fibers brushing together. Perhaps the flicker of firelight casting shadows across its surface. There were no surprises in sound. No metallic clicks or rattles. No sudden turning of parts. Doors did not announce themselves. They existed quietly. In colder regions, where insulation was necessary, doors were heavier, slabs of wood or layered boards. But even these were often not attached with hinges. Instead, they were wedged, propped, or balanced. To exit such a home in the morning, one might first have to lift the entire door from its resting place. Not with haste. Not with one hand. But with care. The modern mind, accustomed to flicking a latch in less than a second, can scarcely imagine the slowness required to leave one's dwelling in such times. To walk outside was not impulsive. It was deliberate. And yet, that very slowness may have made life softer. There was never a moment when someone burst through a room unexpectedly. There was no such thing as slamming the door. Wood could scrape, but it could not shout. Even the materials of early doors played a role in sound and rhythm. Stone doors, such as those found in ancient tombs or granaries, did not swing, they rolled. Carved from circular slabs, they were pushed along grooves in the ground. To open such a door required time and many hands. And when it closed, it did not snap into place. It settled slowly with the deep, low sound of stone meeting stone. One can almost hear it now. That steady grinding, fading away into silence. Around the time of ancient Rome, and possibly earlier, we begin to see primitive latch systems. These were not yet doorknobs. They were sliding wooden or metal bars that moved into slots. To operate them, you needed something to grip. A basic handle. Handles predate knobs. For thousands of years, people pulled rather than turned. Imagine walking into a home in the year 200 AD. Perhaps in Roman Britain. The door is a thick wooden slab, reinforced with iron strapping. A metal loop hangs near the edge. You grasp it, you pull. It is not elegant, but it is intentional. Over time, artisans began to decorate these handles. Ironmongers learned to twist metal into spirals. Handles began to curve. Some were shaped like leaves, others like serpents. Function gently began to meet form. Yet still, you did not rotate to open. You moved to unlatch, to pull, to slide, to lift. The world had not yet discovered the quiet satisfaction of the clockwise twist. That invention would come much, much later. By the medieval period, one sees the emergence of the thumb latch, particularly in England and France. The thumb latch is a simple mechanism, a small metal lever mounted on the outside of a door. When pressed by the thumb, it lifts a latch bolt on the inside. The motion is deliberate, yet satisfying. A soft press. A gentle click. The door yields. Imagine approaching such a door. Your fingers hover above the lever. The metal is cool to the touch, slightly worn from centuries of use. You press down. You feel the latch move beneath your thumb. You pull, and the door opens. Notice the rhythm. Notice the predictability. Notice the way centuries of design have reduced effort without demanding thought. This was the first time the door began to respond to a small human gesture. A minimal motion produced a significant result. And with that, the foundation for the modern doorknob was laid. Even in these early stages, function met form. Blacksmiths began to shape handles with curves, spirals, and leaf motifs. Some took inspiration from nature, serpents coiled along the edge, vines creeping over the surface. In small manor houses, craftsmen spent hours on the design of a handle, polishing, bending, and engraving it until it felt right. But these decorations were subtle. They did not interfere with the motion. They were a quiet celebration of aesthetics within the bounds of function. Handles had to be comfortable. Handles had to be intuitive. A sharp spike, a rough edge, a twisting pattern that caught the fingers too harshly, all were considered failures. The ideal handle was smooth, predictable, gentle. Something that could be used hundreds of times a day without fatigue or frustration. Handles, like doors themselves, varied across regions. Northern Europe, handles were often heavy iron, simple, functional, slightly rustic. The cold metal tempered the hand, grounding it. Southern Europe, handles were lighter, sometimes bronze, occasionally incorporating small curves for elegance. the motion of opening was accompanied by a soft visual delight. Asia, in Japan and China, handles were often absent. Sliding doors dominated. Where handles existed, they were recessed pulls, subtle, minimal, designed for gliding rather than twisting or pulling. Even in these variations, the principle remained: the handle transforms human intention into motion. It is a bridge between hand and door. And the motion must be smooth, unhurried, natural. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine pulling a simple wooden handle. The wood is slightly worn, warm to the touch. Your fingers wrap gently around it. You lift, pull, or slide. The door responds with slight resistance. Then it moves. Slowly. Predictably. Reliably. Every successful pull is subtly satisfying. No bells or whistles. No sudden motion. Just quiet, measured movement. Sliding doors introduce a different rhythm. The hand moves sideways. The friction of wood on wood. The small grind of grooves. The faint creak of ancient hinges. These sounds, minimal yet present, are part of the tactile feedback. The motion is deliberate, requiring attention yet not strain. Even without a knob, early humans experienced the same joy we feel when a door opens effortlessly today. Handles were not only functional, they were also symbolic. To reach a handle was to make a choice: to enter, to leave, to explore, or to retreat. Every approach to a door was a moment of intention, magnified by the simplicity of the handle. The hand's motion became a ritual. Lift. Slide. Press. Pull. These were gestures imbued with meaning, repeated countless times, unnoticed. Yet they shaped the human relationship with space. Even today, when we absent-mindedly open a door, the echoes of these early motions linger. The doorknob, humble as it is, carries the weight of all these gestures across time. As time passed, latches and handles became more sophisticated. Springs were introduced. Rotating mechanisms began to appear. Designs were refined for ergonomics and aesthetics. Each step remained gentle, intentional, quiet. And with this slow, careful evolution, the foundation for what we now recognize as the modern doorknob was fully established. We are ready, then, to step into the story of the first true rotating knobs, where human touch meets mechanical ingenuity, and a single motion controls entry and privacy in ways the earliest humans could only imagine. One aspect of early handles and latches that is often overlooked is the experience of repetition. Every day, people opened and closed the same doors dozens of times. Every day, they learned, slowly, to interact with the handle with precision. Their hands memorized the shape. Their fingers learned the weight. Their motion became instinctive. Think of a small medieval cottage. A family wakes in the morning. A mother rises, approaches the door to fetch water. She lifts the wooden handle. The door yields, softly. A child follows, reaching for the same handle. His fingers wrap differently, but he learns quickly. Each morning, the motion is repeated. Each evening, the same. Over weeks, months, years, this repetition becomes part of life. The handle itself becomes familiar, comforting, almost alive. One does not have to consciously think about the motion. It happens naturally. The human body anticipates resistance, calculates pressure, and executes the motion with ease. There is a subtle rhythm to this act. Lift, slide, press, pull, repeat. A quiet cadence. Each repetition reinforces a connection between human and object, motion and result. The door responds, reliably, predictably. Even as handles evolved into more complex mechanisms, this rhythm remained. Early humans learned that interaction with a door was not a momentary action, but a ritual embedded in daily life. It is easy to overlook this when thinking of modern doorknobs, or even when observing a simple door in your home today. But every turn, every pull, every press echoes centuries of repeated motion. Your hand carries the memory of countless generations, long before knobs existed. Handles taught people patience. They taught attention. And, in subtle ways, they taught respect for boundaries, both physical and personal. When we approach a door today, often we act almost unconsciously. But behind every simple motion lies this long history of practice, rhythm, and gentle repetition, a silent heritage carried in the human hand. And so, before we move on to the first true rotating knobs, it is worth pausing to imagine the quiet lives of countless hands, each learning, each repeating, each finding comfort in the simple, dependable motion of a handle. The first true turning mechanisms appear much later, but even then, they do not resemble modern knobs. In medieval Europe, doors were usually secured with thumb latches. These consisted of a metal lever on the outside of the door, which when pressed, lifted a bar on the inside. A thumb would push the lever down. A latch would rise. The door would open. The motion is not a twist. It is a press. Still, it introduces a subtle shift. No longer do you push the entire door with full force. Instead, you signal a mechanism. You activate it. A small action produces a larger result. This idea, that a door should respond to a specific human gesture, is foundational to the history of the doorknob. By the 14th century, thumb latches were common across England and much of Europe. They were cheap, easy to forge, often made of black iron. Even today, in old countryside cottages, you may find original latches that have survived for centuries. Their movement is soft, their purpose unchanged. But still, the hand does not rotate. That innovation would belong to the coming age of the spring latch. After centuries of simple handles and thumb latches, human ingenuity slowly introduced something new, the mechanical latch. Unlike earlier devices, which relied solely on lifting, pulling, or pressing, the mechanical latch allowed a controlled, repeatable, and predictable motion. It was an early attempt to make doors not just functional, but responsive to human touch. The earliest mechanical latches appeared in medieval Europe, around the 12th or 13th century. These devices were surprisingly simple. A bar of iron or brass, a pivot point, a spring mechanism in some cases. Press the lever, lift the bar, and the door opened. Release it, and the bar fell back into place, holding the door closed. There was a subtle elegance in this simplicity. Every component had a purpose. Every movement was intentional. There were no extraneous parts. Nothing clattered unnecessarily. Imagine, if you will, a quiet stone corridor in a small castle. A soft footstep approaches. The door is heavy. The latch is in place. The hand reaches out, finds the lever, presses gently. A soft click. The bar lifts. The door yields. There is satisfaction in that motion. Not excitement. Not urgency. Just the quiet efficiency of human effort translated through metal and wood. As blacksmiths experimented, springs were introduced to some latches. The spring allowed the bar to return automatically to its resting position. Before this, the bar might need to be reset manually. A door left partially open could swing freely. But with a spring, the door closed quietly, predictably, every time. The addition of a spring also changed the interaction with the hand. No longer was lifting sufficient. Now, a gentle press could move the latch, and a soft resistance indicated the spring's presence. It is worth imagining the subtle sensations here. The faint tension in the spring. The muted metallic click as the bar falls back. The smooth motion of polished iron against worn wood. Each use became a small tactile lesson, repeated hundreds of times, teaching hands, fingers, and muscles exactly how to interact with the device. Latches were more than functional. They were subtle markers of privacy and ownership. In a time when doors themselves were increasingly used to divide space, bedrooms from halls, storage rooms from kitchens, the latch signaled intentional separation. To lift or press a latch was to assert permission. To leave it in place was to maintain boundaries. A closed latch was not merely a barrier, it was a statement. The motion of operating a latch, slow, controlled, deliberate, became part of human etiquette. One did not slam the door. One did not yank. One pressed gently. Lift. Click. Enter. There is a rhythm in that behavior, repeated silently across centuries. It connects the hands of people long gone with our own. Then in these early days, function and form began to intertwine. Blacksmiths experimented with shapes, engravings, and finishes. Some latches were simple iron bars. Others bore intricate spirals, leaves, or floral patterns. Some were polished to a subtle sheen. The tactile experience mattered as much as the visual. The feel of the metal under the hand was considered carefully. Cool, smooth iron encouraged steady, confident movement. Slightly textured surfaces provided grip. Rounded edges reduced wear on fingers. This attention to detail may seem excessive for a simple device. But in the quiet life of a medieval home, these small considerations were everything. Mechanical latches varied subtly by region. England and Northern Europe, heavy iron bars, functional and durable. Handles were simple, sometimes rustic, often left unpolished. Southern Europe, latches were often lighter, with polished bronze and decorative plates. More emphasis was placed on aesthetics while retaining function. Asia, in Japan and China, latches were generally simpler, integrated into sliding doors rather than pivoting gates. Minimal, subtle, harmonious with the surrounding architecture. Despite differences in design and material, the principle remained universal. A small, deliberate motion opens or closes the door. The mechanical latch, in its simplicity, created a direct connection between human intention and motion. Press. Lift. Slide. Click. the door responds predictably. The motion is calm, measured, and repeatable. Every interaction reinforced the relationship between person and object. The hand learns, the fingers anticipate, and the motion becomes ingrained. There is a meditative quality here. One could operate a latch slowly, deliberately, and feel centuries of design guiding each movement. Even today, when we turn modern doorknobs, this ancient rhythm echoes in our hands. Mechanical latches set the stage for the next innovation, rotating knobs. With latches, humans had learned that doors could respond to small motions. They had learned that resistance and release provide comfort and predictability. They had learned that the hand, moving intentionally, could control entry effortlessly. The final step, the modern doorknob, would combine these lessons. It would allow a twisting motion, uniting function, elegance, and rhythm. But before that, the mechanical latch represents a quiet triumph of design. It is a point in history where technology meets intuition. A bridge between ancient wooden doors and the polished brass knobs of the industrial era. And so, with gentle patience, we move toward the moment where the first doorknobs begin to turn. And as we imagine the gentle click of a mechanical latch closing for the 100th time, we begin to notice something almost imperceptible, the way humans have always sought predictability and comfort in small motions. The simple act of pressing, lifting, or sliding a piece of metal to allow passage is quietly reassuring. It is a motion repeated countless times by countless hands, forming a subtle thread through history that connects every home, every room, every threshold. In that connection, there is a kind of silent poetry, a rhythm that has guided humanity from the earliest doors to the polished knobs we turn today. As the centuries unfolded, humanity's desire for both convenience and privacy slowly shaped the evolution of doors. The mechanical latch was a quiet revolution, but it was only the beginning. From its simplicity, a new idea emerged, the spring latch. The spring latch added a level of precision and reliability previously unseen. No longer did a latch simply drop into place. Now, a mechanism ensured that the door would automatically secure itself after opening or closing. The spring inside applied gentle pressure, a subtle resistance that rewarded careful, intentional touch. Imagine, slowly, approaching a door in a home of the late 17th century. Your hand moves toward the polished brass lever. There is weight, a slight resistance, a sense of expectation. You press down. The latch yields. The door opens. And as you release, the spring nudges the mechanism back into place. A soft, nearly inaudible click marks the completion of the motion. The door is secure again, without any conscious effort on your part. This small innovation may seem minor, but its impact was profound. The spring latch allowed doors to function almost autonomously, while still responding intimately to human touch. It introduced the first sense of effortless interaction, a bridge between manual labor and mechanical assistance. With the rise of the spring latch came another innovation, the rotating doorknob. Unlike levers or handles, which require lifting, pushing, or sliding, the rotating knob introduced a motion that was both natural and satisfying. The hand wraps around the smooth sphere. Fingers close gently. A twist, clockwise or counterclockwise. The internal mechanism responds. The latch retracts. The door opens. The first doorknobs were simple in form, often made of wood or metal, sometimes polished to a gentle sheen. They were functional, reliable, and ergonomic. But they also offered a new kind of sensory pleasure, the subtle resistance of rotation, the predictable return of the knob to its resting position, the quiet click of the latch moving into place. For early users, this motion was a small marvel. A single, simple gesture controlled access to a space. It was smooth. It was deliberate. And it carried the satisfaction of precision engineering into the human hand. Early doorknobs reflected the materials available to their creators. Wood, carefully turned and sanded, offered warmth and a tactile familiarity. Bronze and brass were polished to a soft glow, responding pleasantly to the touch and gradually acquiring a patina with age. Occasionally, ceramic knobs appeared, delicate yet functional, often painted or glazed with subtle designs. Even in these early stages, style mattered. Knobs were small, understated objects, yet they became symbols of refinement and care. A well-crafted knob implied attention to detail, craftsmanship, and intention. It was a quiet assertion that even the smallest, most mundane object could be elevated to art. Across regions, materials and aesthetics varied. Northern Europe favored iron and wood, durable and austere. Southern Europe often used brass and bronze, polished and warm. In America, early colonial homes combined simplicity with practicality, favoring smooth wooden knobs on sturdy doors. Despite these differences, the principle remained universal. A knob must feel comfortable, function reliably, and invite the hand to perform its quiet ritual. A rotating knob is more than a sphere attached to a door. It is a small orchestration of mechanical elements, designed to transform a simple human twist into the motion of the latch. Inside the knob, a spindle connects the exterior knob to the interior latch. Twisting the knob rotates the spindle, retracting the latch bolt from the strike plate. Springs return both knob and latch to their resting positions. The movement is precise. The resistance is slight but noticeable. Every motion is deliberate and predictably rewarding. Imagine the sensation: your fingers curl around the knob, feeling the smooth surface. You twist slowly. The spindle turns. The latch retracts. The door moves. Then the mechanism resets. Quiet. Reliable. Gentle. Every interaction is a lesson in patience, a moment of tactile satisfaction, a subtle connection between hand, mind, and object. The rotating doorknob quickly spread across Europe and eventually to America. Its simplicity and elegance made it accessible, practical, and desirable. In wealthier homes, knobs were polished, decorated, and even engraved. In more modest settings, plain wood or iron provided the same function without ornamentation. The concept was universal: human intention met mechanical response. Turn the knob. Open the door. Release. Close. Repeat. Across homes, offices, and public buildings, this motion became second nature. Children learned it. Visitors relied on it. Servants grew accustomed to its quiet rhythm. The doorknob introduced a subtle, almost meditative repetition into everyday life, actions performed hundreds of times, unnoticed, yet grounding. The first doorknobs did more than control access, they had a psychological effect. The resistance of a well-crafted knob, the smoothness of rotation, the soft click of the latch returning, all of these provided a satisfying sense of control. In a world without modern conveniences, this small, reliable interaction offered reassurance. Every door opened, every knob turned, carried with it the implicit promise, you control this space. You may enter. You may leave. The action is yours, deliberate, secure. There is a calm in that certainty. A rhythm repeated daily that becomes comforting. Even the smallest doorknob connects the human hand with centuries of design, repetition, and quiet ingenuity. By the 18th century, improvements in metalworking, machining, and standardization allowed knobs to be manufactured more widely. Springs were refined, latches became more consistent, and knobs could be replicated precisely, reducing the variability that sometimes frustrated users. This shift marked the beginning of the doorknob as we know it today, a commonplace object, present in nearly every home, yet grounded in centuries of careful design. The combination of form, function, and repetition had created a new standard for human interaction with doors. From this moment forward, doors would not simply be barriers, they would respond, reliably, gracefully, and quietly, to the touch of a hand. And so, as we imagine the first hands wrapping around these early knobs, we begin to feel the connection across time. The simple twist, the smooth rotation, the quiet click of a spring, these were not just mechanical actions. They were gestures, repeated countless times, linking human intention to the world. The first true doorknobs introduced rhythm, repetition, and predictability. They gave control, comfort, and a sense of mastery over our immediate environment. And they did so quietly, without drama, without urgency. Simply, reliably. Every turn of a knob is, in a sense, a meditation. Every click is a small testament to the ingenuity of those who came before. And in that quiet motion, we begin to understand the subtle beauty of everyday life. The Industrial Revolution, beginning in the late 18th century, brought profound changes to nearly every aspect of human life. Factories, mechanized tools, and advances in metalworking transformed how people built houses, manufactured furniture, and, of course, created doorknobs. Before industrialization, knobs were individually handcrafted. A single artisan would shape wood or cast metal, polish the surface, fit the spindle, and adjust the spring. Each piece carried slight variations, unique imperfections, and subtle characteristics born of careful human attention. The Industrial Revolution changed all of this. Machines could produce knobs at scale, consistency, and precision previously impossible. Iron and brass could be shaped quickly, springs could be manufactured to exact tolerances, and knobs could be attached to standardized latches. In workshops and early factories, craftsmen operated lathes, molds, and presses. Wood knobs were turned mechanically, producing identical, symmetrical spheres, polished smoothly with sand and cloth. Brass knobs were cast in molds, removing much of the variability that once marked handcrafted pieces. Springs were compressed with uniform tension, ensuring every latch operated in exactly the same way. Even the screws, spindles, and backplates were standardized, allowing a doorknob from one factory to fit almost any door in the region. This uniformity changed the experience of using doors. No longer did one need to adjust to a particular door's quirks. Every knob rotated predictably. Every latch clicked consistently. The motion became universal, intuitive, and comforting. Imagine, slowly, a quiet Victorian street. Each home's front door presents a polished brass knob, smooth, shiny, identical to its neighbors. Each rotation produces the same satisfying click. Every hand that touches it feels a connection to precision, reliability, and order. With mass production came standardization. Doorknobs, once unique to each door, now followed consistent sizes, threading, and spindle lengths. This had profound effects on architecture. Doors could be produced in standardized dimensions, and knobs and latches would fit reliably. Builders no longer needed to craft or adjust knobs for each door individually. Standardization also introduced predictability for users. The moment one learned to turn a knob in one house, that knowledge transferred seamlessly to any other home with the same standard. Twisting a knob in London felt the same as twisting one in New York. This predictability was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet comforting. It allowed humans to move through spaces with confidence, knowing that every door would respond in the same gentle, reliable manner. The Industrial Revolution also expanded the range of materials used for doorknobs. Brass and bronze remained popular, especially for public buildings and wealthy homes. Cast iron became widely available, strong and durable, often painted or enameled to resist corrosion. Porcelain and ceramic knobs gained popularity in residential settings, offering a smooth, warm surface that was both functional and decorative. Later, early plastics began to appear, providing inexpensive, lightweight alternatives for mass-market homes. Each material brought its own tactile quality. Brass felt cool and firm. Porcelain offered a smooth, delicate touch. Iron conveyed solidity and weight. Every turn of a knob became a small sensory experience, connecting the human hand with the properties of the material. Industrialization did not erase design. In fact, it expanded possibilities. Knobs could now be both functional and decorative, without significantly increasing cost. Factories could produce intricate patterns using molds, allowing homeowners to enjoy the elegance of craftsmanship without hiring an artisan. Victorian homes, in particular, showcased this blend of function and beauty. Knobs might feature floral motifs, geometric patterns, or intricate scrollwork. Even the most utilitarian knob carried a quiet aesthetic statement, enriching the experience of opening a door. Imagine turning a brass knob with a subtle engraved pattern. Your fingers trace the design without effort, your hand adapting naturally to the curves and edges. The door yields with predictable motion, and yet the mind notices a small pleasure, the beauty hidden in the details. With industrialization, doorknobs became ubiquitous. Factories churned out knobs for homes, offices, schools, hospitals, and government buildings. The simple, satisfying motion of twisting a knob spread across society. Children grew up learning the rotation. Visitors expected the click of the latch. Builders and architects integrated standardized knobs into floor plans with ease. In this way, the Industrial Revolution transformed doorknobs from handcrafted luxuries into everyday companions. Even the psychology of the doorknob was subtly influenced. The predictability, the smooth rotation, and the soft click of the latch created a quiet sense of security and control. One could open or close a door without effort or hesitation, and in that small action, find reassurance in a world that was rapidly changing. Consider the sound of a turning doorknob in a 19th century home. The spring latch clicks gently into place. The knob rotates smoothly, guided by the precision of industrial machinery. There is no roughness, no unexpected resistance. It is predictable, almost soothing. Even the environment contributes: the soft thud of the door closing, the faint creak of hinges, the echo in a hallway lined with standardized doors. All these subtle sounds become part of a rhythm, a quiet meditation that accompanies everyday life. Industrialization did not make life noisy or harsh in this context. It refined motion, improved reliability, and allowed humans to engage with doors, and with space itself, with ease and grace. The Industrial Revolution reminds us that even the most ordinary objects, like a doorknob, carry the weight of history, design, and human ingenuity. Standardization and mass production made doorknobs accessible, predictable, and reliable, yet they retained a quiet elegance. Every turn connects us to centuries of innovation. Every click of the latch links human intention to mechanical precision. And every interaction, no matter how mundane, reflects a long lineage of problem-solving, creativity, and subtle artistry. Even today, when we reach for a modern knob, we continue a ritual begun centuries ago. The Industrial Revolution ensured that this simple, satisfying motion, turning, twisting, opening, closing, would become a shared experience for millions, across continents, across generations. As we move into the 19th and early 20th centuries, doorknobs began to take on new identities. The Industrial Revolution provided precision and consistency, but now, designers and architects sought to combine function with beauty. Homes were no longer just structures, they were statements, and every detail, including the doorknob, contributed to the story of a space. The Victorian era, spanning much of the 19th century, embraced decoration and ornamentation. Doors were no longer mere barriers, they were canvases, and doorknobs became subtle works of art. Victorian knobs were often made of brass, bronze, or porcelain, sometimes painted or glazed with delicate patterns. Floral motifs, intricate scrolls, and embossed designs transformed the knob from a simple functional object into something beautiful to touch and behold. Imagine, slowly, a quiet Victorian hallway. The morning light falls on a polished brass knob, its surface catching the glow just enough to hint at intricate patterns. You reach out. Your fingers feel every curve and line. You twist. The latch responds smoothly, predictably. There is satisfaction, not just in the motion, but in the subtle artistry under your fingertips. Victorian knobs often communicated a sense of refinement. A home might display the social status, taste, or attention to detail of its inhabitants. And yet, despite their ornate appearance, the knobs remain deliberate and functional, engineered to operate smoothly, every time. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, Art Nouveau emerged. This style rejected rigid symmetry in favor of organic, flowing forms, inspired by nature. Flowers, vines, and even insect motifs appeared in architecture, furniture, and doorknobs. Art Nouveau knobs were often curved, elongated, or twisted, reflecting the sinuous lines of the style. They were sometimes cast in bronze, carefully polished, or paired with glass and enamel to create a subtle interplay of color and texture. Picture a quiet Art Nouveau home. A doorknob, shaped like a gently curling vine, rests in your hand. The surface is smooth, the curves invite your fingers to explore. You rotate it slowly. The latch yields effortlessly. The experience is both practical and poetic, a reminder that everyday objects can be beautiful, even meditative. Art Nouveau knobs were less about rigid symmetry and more about harmony with their surroundings. They fit naturally into a holistic vision of design, enhancing the tactile, visual, and even emotional experience of interacting with the home. By the early 20th century, styles began to shift again. While Victorian and Art Nouveau emphasized ornamentation, early modernist movements favored clean lines, simplicity, and efficiency. Doorknobs became more streamlined, often spherical or oval, focusing on ergonomics and smooth function. Materials varied: polished metals, bakelite, early plastics, and wood were all common. The emphasis was on reliability and tactile comfort. Imagine approaching a door in a home built in 1920. The knob is smooth, cool to the touch. Your fingers curl around it naturally. A simple twist opens the door. There are no intricate patterns, no embellishments. Yet there is elegance in its restraint, a quiet confidence in its design. This period represents a balance, function, comfort, and visual appeal all working together. Designers understood that a knob is not just a mechanism, it is an interface between human and space. Throughout these styles, materials became a key part of the experience. Brass and bronze were common for their durability and warmth under the hand. Porcelain and glass introduced smoothness, subtle coolness, and aesthetic versatility. Wood, often polished or lacquered, gave a natural, comforting texture. Early plastics allowed mass production while maintaining smoothness and reliability. Every material offered a slightly different tactile experience. A polished brass knob felt solid, firm, and reassuring. Porcelain offered a cool, almost delicate touch. Wood was warm, natural, and slightly textured. And each interaction, twisting, turning, opening, was a moment to feel history through the hand. Even within these movements, regional variations persisted. In Europe, knobs often reflected the architectural style of the building: Victorian, Art Nouveau, or early modernist. In America, early 20th century homes preferred streamlined, durable designs, often influenced by practicality and mass production. In Asia, while Western styles appeared in urban centers, traditional sliding doors with recessed pulls remained common, emphasizing subtlety and flow rather than rotation. Despite these differences, the underlying principle remained universal. The doorknob transforms a small gesture into movement, guiding entry and exit with reliability, rhythm, and comfort. Turn a doorknob slowly in your mind. Feel its shape, the cool or warm surface, the slight resistance as the spindle rotates, the soft click as the latch retracts. Listen to the muted sound of the door swinging open, the echo in a quiet hallway. Every knob from this era was designed with the human hand in mind. Every curve, every material choice, every mechanism worked together to create a small, satisfying ritual repeated countless times. This ritual is calming, predictable, meditative, and it is something we still experience today, whether consciously or unconsciously, each time we open a door. Victorian, Art Nouveau, and early 20th century knobs demonstrate a delicate balance between beauty and practicality. Victorian knobs celebrate ornamentation. Art Nouveau emphasizes flowing, organic forms. Early modernist knobs focus on simplicity, ergonomics, and efficiency. Yet despite differences in style, the core experience remains. The hand meets the knob, intention meets mechanism, and the door responds reliably. Every twist, Every turn, every click is a quiet connection across time, a moment that links designers, craftsmen, homeowners, and users across generations. It is this enduring human connection, embedded in an everyday object, that makes the history of doorknobs quietly fascinating, soothing, and meditative. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, glass and crystal doorknobs became increasingly popular, particularly in Victorian and early modern homes. These knobs were often clear or lightly tinted, facetted like jewels, and refracted light in subtle, mesmerizing ways. Imagine reaching for a crystal knob. Your fingers trace the smooth, cool facets. Light catches the edges, creating tiny reflections that dance softly across the door and hallway. You twist slowly. The internal latch moves effortlessly. There is a quiet satisfaction in this motion, amplified by the tactile pleasure of the smooth, solid material. Glass and crystal knobs were not merely decorative, they were interactive art. Their visual elegance enhanced the physical act of opening a door, making a small, ordinary gesture feel luxurious. Yet the motion remained predictable, soothing, and meditative, offering a gentle rhythm to daily life. These knobs also reflected status. A crystal knob in a home might indicate refinement, wealth, or attention to detail. But even without considering social implications, the experience of touching and turning one was inherently calming, an early example of everyday objects designed to delight the senses. Across Victorian, Art Nouveau, and early 20th century styles, one common thread unites all doorknobs: the relationship between hand, touch, and repeated motion. Consider the act of opening a door. You wrap your fingers around the knob. You twist. The latch retracts. You release. The mechanism returns to rest. Every day, countless repetitions create a rhythm, a subtle meditative practice embedded in ordinary life. The mind quickly internalizes the motion. Muscle memory forms. Hands anticipate resistance and adjust automatically. In this repetition, there is comfort, predictability, and calm. Every smooth rotation reassures the user that the environment is orderly, stable, and responsive. Designers of the era, whether consciously or unconsciously, understood this. Knobs were shaped for tactile satisfaction. Materials were chosen for feel as much as durability. The physical rhythm of interaction became part of the emotional experience of a home. Even today, when a modern doorknob spins effortlessly in your hand, it carries echoes of these centuries of design, the quiet lessons of ergonomics, material, and form. The hand remembers, long after the mind forgets, the gentle reassurance of a well-crafted, responsive doorknob. As the 20th century unfolded, the world changed at a breathtaking pace. Electric lights glowed in nearly every home, automobiles lined the streets, and factories produced goods faster than ever before. And quietly, almost invisibly, the materials of the humble doorknob evolved along with everything else. In earlier centuries, knobs had been forged, carved, or cast by hand. Now, they were molded, machined, and manufactured on vast assembly lines. The shift was not only technological, it was tactile. Every new material brought with it a new temperature, a new weight, a new sensation for the waiting hand. Even as new materials emerged, brass and bronze remained the timeless favorites. Their color, a warm, muted gold, carried a sense of permanence and quiet strength. Brass was self-healing in a way, developing a thin patina that protected it from wear, softening the shine without losing its dignity. Imagine, slowly, the feel of a polished brass knob beneath your fingers. Cool at first touch. Then, as your hand lingers, it warms slightly, the surface responding to your presence. You twist gently, and the latch moves with that familiar, muted click, a sound that has not changed in centuries. Through much of the 20th century, brass and bronze knobs occupied a middle ground between tradition and progress. They were found in banks, schools, hotels, and quiet suburban homes, each one a small reminder of stability in an age of constant motion. Porcelain and glass continued their quiet reign from the previous century. In the morning light, a glass knob sparkled like a captured droplet of water. In dim lamplight, a porcelain knob reflected only the faintest glow, soft and understated. These materials added lightness to rooms heavy with wooden fabric. They were beautiful to see, but also comforting to hold. Smooth, cool, familiar. A homeowner in 1930 might have paused for just a moment before turning a glass knob, admiring how the facets caught the sun. The experience was subtle, but unmistakably human, a gentle reminder that even in an industrial world, there was still room for grace. Then came a revolution in chemistry. In 1907, Bakelite, the first synthetic plastic, was created. It was durable, heat-resistant, and could be molded to almost any shape. For the first time, doorknobs could be identical, endlessly reproducible, and available to nearly everyone. Factories produced them in deep browns, marbled creams, and muted reds. They were warm to the touch, less metallic, less cold, and they did not tarnish or corrode. Picture a modest apartment in the 1940s. A tenant returns home after a long day, fingers resting on a smooth, amber-colored Bakelite knob. It turns effortlessly, without a sound. The latch gives way, the door opens, and a sense of calm follows. Plastics democratized design. They made beauty and reliability affordable, and in doing so, brought the quiet satisfaction of a well-made knob to millions of homes. By mid-century, architecture embraced modernism, clean lines, minimal ornamentation, and polished surfaces. Doorknobs reflected this aesthetic. Chrome-plated and stainless steel knobs became the new symbols of progress. They gleamed under electric light, shining with precision. Factories, offices, and hospitals adopted them eagerly. Hygienic, efficient, durable. A chrome knob felt smooth and cool, almost futuristic compared to the warm patina of brass. Turning one carried a quiet authority, mechanical, confident, and exact. In homes, these knobs blended with mid-century furniture, sleek appliances, and new materials like glass block and laminate. Every surface seemed to say, "The future is here, and it works." Yet not everyone wanted metal and chrome. As the 1960s and 70s arrived, design turned back toward natural materials. Wooden knobs, sometimes paired with brass or ceramic bases, returned in soft tones of oak, teak, and walnut. These knobs felt familiar, human, and grounding. They connected the hand to nature, warm, textured, slightly irregular. When you turned a wooden knob, you could feel the faint grain beneath your fingers, the story of the tree still written in the lines. Homes of this era often mixed old and new, wood beside metal, natural warmth beside industrial precision. Each material complemented the other, creating a quiet harmony of contrasts. In the decades that followed, aluminum entered the scene. Light, strong, and resistant to corrosion, it became a favorite for schools, offices, and later, for minimalist homes. Aluminum knobs were understated, silver gray, simple, and functional. They lacked the shine of chrome and the weight of brass, but they offered efficiency and ease. Imagine the sensation of an aluminum knob on a cool morning. It yields gently beneath your touch, rotating without effort. There is no ornate pattern, no elaborate form, just simplicity, direct and honest. In that simplicity, many found peace. By the latter half of the century, designers began blending materials, metal with plastic, wood with chrome, glass with brass. Each combination offered a new sensory experience, a new kind of balance between warmth and modernity. A knob might have a metal base for strength and a plastic or wooden grip for comfort. Or a glass face set into a brass collar, reflecting light like a captured star. These designs reflected the changing human relationship with technology, the desire for efficiency paired with the need for warmth and familiarity. Every doorknob was a small negotiation between machine precision and human comfort. Each material told a quiet story. Brass whispered of tradition and permanence. Porcelain spoke of gentleness and care. Glass captured light, offering beauty in reflection. Bakelite and plastic promised accessibility and innovation. Steel and chrome expressed confidence and progress. Wood reminded us of nature and home. Aluminum carried the tone of modern simplicity. Together, these materials formed a century of tactile language, a dictionary of textures and temperatures, shapes and sounds. Every time someone turned a knob, they participated in that language, whether they realized it or not. The 20th century was, in many ways, the century of the hand. Machines advanced, buildings reached higher, and yet, at every threshold, a human hand still performed the same simple motion: reach, grasp, turn, release. Across all the new materials, that ritual remained unchanged. The hand adapted easily, from the warmth of brass to the smoothness of glass, from the firmness of bakelite to the coolness of steel. Each interaction affirmed a connection between human intention and mechanical response. As the century came to a close, designers looked forward to digital locks and keypads, but still, most doors opened the same way they always had, with a quiet twist, a soft click, and the gentle weight of a well-balanced knob returning to rest. And so, when you next reach for a doorknob, any doorknob, pause for a brief moment. Feel its temperature. Notice its texture. Listen to the faint sound as it turns and releases. That small, familiar motion contains a century of material exploration, of invention and quiet beauty. From brass to glass, from bakelite to chrome, each knob carries within it the memory of human touch, a history you can feel beneath your fingertips. It is a reminder that even the simplest objects can hold within them the story of progress, of comfort, of connection. And as the door closes softly behind you, that story continues, quietly, patiently, in the stillness of the room. By the late 20th century, design had entered a new era, one that looked beyond appearance and focused on experience. Function was no longer enough. Beauty was not enough. Now, the doorknob, like every other object in the modern home, was being studied for how it felt to use. Designers began asking new questions. How does the hand approach the knob? What angle feels most natural? What level of resistance is satisfying? What happens in that brief, almost invisible moment between intention and motion? And so began the age of design and ergonomics, a quiet revolution in the way humans interacted with the most ordinary object in the home. In earlier centuries, knobs were crafted to fit machines, molds, and materials. Now, they were crafted to fit humans. Designers studied the anatomy of the hand, the way fingers curl, the thumb presses, and the wrist turns. They measured angles, grip strength, and torque. They watched people open doors in laboratories and offices, observing micro-movements that had never been studied before. From these observations came designs that respected comfort, motion, and ease. Doorknobs became less spherical, more sculpted, sometimes flatter, sometimes elongated, to reduce strain and improve grip. Imagine, slowly, resting your hand on a perfectly shaped knob. It feels natural, effortless, as if the object has been waiting for your hand all along. You turn gently. There is no resistance, no awkwardness, just smooth, predictable motion. This was not luxury. It was empathy, translated into design. During this period, another familiar form began to take prominence, the lever handle. Unlike a round knob, a lever required minimal rotation. A simple downward press was enough to open the door. This change was subtle, but deeply meaningful. Lever handles were easier for everyone to use: children, the elderly, and those with limited mobility. In a way, the lever handle symbolized a quiet act of inclusion. It recognized that good design should be universal, accessible without effort or pain. Picture yourself standing before a modern door. The lever extends outward, waiting. You press gently, and the latch retracts with a soft, almost imperceptible sound. The motion feels graceful, intuitive, complete. In that instant, the boundary between human and object disappears. Ergonomics is, at its core, the art of comfort. It asks how objects can adapt to people, rather than the other way around. Throughout the mid and late 20th century, design schools and manufacturers applied ergonomic principles to everyday products, chairs, tools, utensils, and yes, even doorknobs. The goal was not speed or efficiency alone. It was to make the act of opening a door feel right. Every curve, every contour, every ounce of pressure was considered carefully. When done well, the user doesn't even notice the design. They simply act, and the door responds, quietly, effortlessly, predictably. That invisibility, that absence of friction, is the mark of perfect ergonomic design. Ergonomic design also redefined materials. Designers realized that comfort wasn't only about shape, it was also about texture, temperature, and feedback. Cool metals, like stainless steel or brushed aluminum, provided clarity and precision. Warmer materials, like wood or plastic composites, felt inviting and personal. Soft coatings, matte finishes, and contoured grips allowed for longer, more comfortable use. The sensory experience mattered. The hand wanted smoothness, but not slipperiness. Weight, but not heaviness. Resistance, but not struggle. These balances transformed a simple action, turning a knob or pressing a lever, into a subtle pleasure, repeated hundreds of times a day. As the 1980s and 1990s arrived, doorknobs became expressions of personal taste. Designers and homeowners began to see them not just as tools, but as statements of identity. Minimalist homes favored brushed metal and geometric forms. Traditionalists kept ornate brass designs with soft patina. Postmodern interiors embraced bold shapes, unexpected colors, and playful experimentation. Every knob told a small story about its environment. A silent reflection of the world beyond the door. Even something as small as the way light reflected off a polished surface could alter the feeling of a room. A gentle gleam might invite, a dull matte might calm. This was the age when aesthetics met psychology, when design wasn't just about how something looked, but how it felt to live with. The ergonomic movement eventually gave rise to universal design, the principle that products should be usable by as many people as possible, regardless of ability. This philosophy reached doorknobs too. Round knobs began to give way to lever handles, push bars, and automated mechanisms. In hospitals, schools, and workplaces, these designs allowed entry and exit with minimal effort, even for someone carrying items or using mobility aids. The shift wasn't only functional. It was compassionate. It recognized the small dignity in being able to open a door without struggle. It transformed accessibility from a technical requirement into a form of quiet empathy. A well-designed handle became a gesture of kindness, a message that said, without words, you belong here, this space welcomes you. Behind every ergonomic innovation was science. Engineers measured torque, angle, and resistance. They studied how the hand rotates from the wrist, and how grip strength changes with age. They discovered that the ideal rotation angle for comfort was small, just enough to engage the latch without unnecessary strain. Springs were fine-tuned. Latch plates were redesigned. The entire internal geometry of a doorknob was optimized for human comfort. Also, that one small, familiar gesture, the turn of a wrist, could remain effortless, century after century. When design and ergonomics work in harmony, something quiet but powerful happens. The mind relaxes. The body doesn't fight the object. The hand doesn't slip or strain. The door opens and closes as if in rhythm with your breathing. There is a subtle sense of trust, the kind that forms when the world behaves exactly as you expect it to. You don't think about the knob, you simply move, and it responds. This invisible partnership between human and object creates a sense of calm, predictability, and peace. It's the same calm that helps one drift towards sleep, the assurance that everything works, quietly, as it should. In this age of design and ergonomics, the doorknob became more than hardware. It became a symbol, a reminder that small details shape human experience. When you reach for a well-designed knob, you feel not just the material, but the care behind it. Every curve, every surface, every gentle click carries intention. It's easy to overlook. But good design often hides in the background, asking for no recognition, only to make life just a little more comfortable, a little more human. And so, as we pause at the close of this section, imagine the quiet perfection of a door that opens effortlessly beneath your hand. The curve fits your palm. The motion is smooth, silent, and sure. There is no resistance, only response. This is the essence of ergonomic design. Not the pursuit of luxury, but the pursuit of ease. Not the invention of complexity, but the refinement of simplicity. The doorknob, refined over centuries, continues to embody that pursuit, a reminder that true design does not demand attention, it simply feels right. And in that perfect motion, that gentle turn, lies the story of how the human hand shaped the objects that shape our world. The story of the doorknob, long defined by metal and motion, eventually entered a new age, one made not of brass or glass, but of circuits, sensors, and invisible waves of information. In the digital era, the doorknob began to evolve beyond its physical form. It became something both familiar and new, an interface between human intention and invisible technology. And yet, beneath all the innovation, the same quiet ritual remained: a door, a threshold, a simple act of entry. The earliest electronic locks appeared quietly in the late 20th century. They were bulky at first, a mixture of metal and microchips, often reserved for hotels or secure facilities. Instead of a turning knob, there was a keycard, a small piece of plastic that carried an invisible code. When held near a reader, a faint beep would sound, followed by the gentle click of an unlocking latch. The motion was minimal, the sound subdued. Gone was the satisfying turn of metal on metal, replaced by the soft whisper of circuitry doing its work. For the first time, entry was achieved not through touch and motion, but through proximity and permission. A quiet exchange of signals replaced the twist of a wrist. And though the change seemed simple, it represented something profound. The first moment when a door began to recognize its user. As technology advanced, locks grew smaller, sleeker, and more intelligent. Digital keypads appeared, allowing entry through numeric codes rather than keys. Then came the arrival of biometric recognition, fingerprints, facial scans, and voice commands. The doorknob, once a purely mechanical object, now became a digital interface, a fusion of security and convenience. Picture this. You approach your front door in the quiet of the evening. The porch light senses your movement. A faint chime plays as your hand nears the knob. A soft light glows beneath your fingertips. A single press, and the door unlocks, silently, as if greeting you by name. This is the world the 21st century created, where the door no longer waits to be turned, it listens, it responds, it learns. For thousands of years, keys were small extensions of identity, carried in pockets, hung on rings, passed from hand to hand. In the digital era, keys began to vanish. Smartphones, wristbands, and voice commands replaced the old metal tokens. A digital signal became the new key, weightless, invisible, and infinitely reproducible. It was a shift that changed the relationship between human and door. There was no more fumbling, no more metallic jingling in the night. Only a gesture, a tap, or the quiet recognition of a nearby device. Convenience was achieved. But something subtle was lost too, the tactile satisfaction of the turn, the gentle friction of brass beneath the hand. In its place came invisible effortlessly, both wondrous and strange. As digital systems replaced mechanical ones, designers faced a new challenge. How to preserve the feeling of engagement in a world where physical interaction was disappearing. A traditional doorknob offered texture, resistance, and sound. A digital panel offered only smooth glass and silent sensors. Many designers began to experiment, reintroducing soft lighting, subtle vibrations, and mechanical feedback to mimic the tactile cues of older knobs. A gentle pulse under the fingertip might confirm a successful scan. A small, measured resistance might simulate a latch turning. In these small gestures, designers were acknowledging something timeless, that humans crave touch. Even in the digital age, we long to feel the world respond to our presence. Modern smart locks are remarkably quiet. There is no grinding metal, no squeak of a turning latch. Only a faint hum, a click, a pause, and the soft sound of a door yielding. Silence, once a byproduct of good engineering, became a deliberate aesthetic. It reflected the minimalist ideals of modern architecture: clean lines, smooth surfaces, and unobtrusive soundscapes. To some, this silence felt serene. To others, it felt uncanny, as if the door had stopped asking for permission to move. But perhaps this silence is simply another phase in the long evolution of restfulness. Just as a well-oiled hinge once represented refinement, so too does the nearly soundless unlock of a modern door represent progress in its purest, most invisible form. In the 2010s and beyond, doors became part of a vast network, the Internet of Things. Smart locks could now communicate with lights, thermostats, and security cameras. A single tap on a phone could open a door miles away. You could grant access to a friend, a delivery worker, or a family member with nothing more than a code or a digital key. The doorknob had officially transcended its physical limits. It was no longer an isolated mechanism, but a node in a living system, one that could remember, adapt, and evolve. Yet, in this web of connectivity, the fundamental experience remained beautifully human. A home still welcomed. A threshold still separated inside from outside. And the simple act of crossing that line still carried meaning. Modern smart locks come in endless forms: brushed metal rectangles, circular touch screens, minimalist black panels with softly glowing numbers. The design language is calm, deliberate, understated. These interfaces often blend seamlessly into their environments, a visual whisper instead of a statement. The goal is to create a sense of harmony between technology and architecture, between function and feeling. Some even feature adaptive lighting, changing brightness with the time of day. Others respond to proximity, gently awakening as a person approaches, like a doorknob that breathes. In this way, the modern lock is not only about access, but about welcome, a digital bow at the threshold, acknowledging the returning traveler. As technology advanced, designers and thinkers began to reflect on what was truly being pursued. The modern door does not simply open, it anticipates, predicts, and responds. In a sense, the history of doorknobs has always been the pursuit of effortless entry. From the smooth rotation of a well-oiled latch to the invisible recognition of a fingerprint, each step has sought to reduce friction, both physical and mental. But within that ease, there lies a question. When the world opens automatically, do we lose something in the motion? Perhaps, like the slowing of a heartbeat, the act of turning a knob was never just about entry. It was a pause, a mindful gesture, a brief moment of transition. Even in a world that opens itself for us, that moment of pause still holds value. Today's doors rarely belong to one world or the other. They live in the space between, mechanical precision fused with digital intuition. A smart lock might feature a mechanical backup keyhole. A traditional knob might hide a fingerprint sensor beneath its surface. Some handles light up as your hand nears them, responding to warmth or motion. In these designs, technology becomes invisible, not the focus, but the background rhythm that enhances daily life. It's a design philosophy that honors both the tactile past and the digital present, an unbroken line stretching from the first hand-forged latch to the quiet hum of a Wi-Fi-enabled lock. And now, as we stand at the threshold of tomorrow, the doorknob continues to evolve. Artificial intelligence, gesture recognition, even voice patterns, all these will shape how we open and close the doors of the future. But no matter how advanced the technology becomes, the essence remains unchanged. There will always be a moment, brief, silent, intimate, when a human hand, or voice, or presence asks permission to enter. That moment is timeless. It connects us to the past, to every door ever opened, every threshold ever crossed. So, as we drift through the calm quiet of this modern age, surrounded by light, code, and design, we can still find comfort in one small, familiar truth. Every doorway, digital or otherwise, is still a meeting point between the self and the world beyond. And as the door closes softly behind us, with a whisper of machinery or the hum of hidden circuits, it offers the same message it always has. You are safe. You are home. And so, we arrive at the end of our long and gentle journey. From ancient stone slabs to futuristic smart locks. From wooden latches to crystal knobs. Across centuries, across continents, across materials and mechanisms. The doorknob has remained humble, unassuming, never demanding applause. Only a small turn. A moment of movement. A simple act of permission. As you rest now, perhaps think of every door you have opened and closed without a second thought. Each one a quiet companion on your path through life. And tonight, as sleep approaches, may your thoughts turn as softly as a doorknob in the dark. Good night.